Good morning, Rio Grande Eagles. It's so good to see you coming to your social studies lesson for today. Today we're going to talk about boomtowns. You may remember that you are also reading a literature story based on boomtowns for Mrs. Badger. This is more of a nonfiction or informational piece on boomtowns. So, you're going to learn a little bit more about boomtowns and the facts behind them. So let's think about what boomtowns have done. They have helped the West keep growing. Back in the 1850s, this is what happened. So what do we consider a boomtown? A boomtown is a town whose population and businesses grow very quickly. Sometimes it can be a town that first appears and then grows where there was no town before. Boomtowns could spring up around the discovery of nearby natural resources, for example, like gold, silver, or oil, or other reasons for sudden rapid growth. So all of a sudden, there would be a need for these towns to just start popping up because of some of the natural resources that people were wanting to claim. So during this time, we had the gold rush, and the gold rush caused many boomtowns. Many boomtowns appeared in California during the gold rush years. As people began to settle in, California towns sprang up almost overnight, wherever there was rumored to be gold. San Francisco, now one of California's major cities, was a boomtown. It barely had 1,000 residents in 1849, when gold was just first discovered. A year later, it had 25,000 people. So, went from 1,000 people to 25,000 people. If you notice, highlighted in yellow, the word residents. If you look below, it says residents are people who live in a place. So, these residents, you are a resident of Berlin, or you are also considered a resident of New Mexico. A resident is a person who lives in a specific place. So, as the gold rush continued, more boomtowns continued to pop up. Home. Boomtowns were considered homes for people in this period of time. So let's read. Boomtowns were places for people to call home when not out prospecting or looking for gold. Some people settled in boomtowns because they hoped to get rich by mining. Others started businesses that sold food and supplies to the prospectors. So, prospectors, if you notice, is highlighted. It's one of those important words that we need to know. A prospector is a person who searches for valuable resources such as gold, silver, oil, or an important natural resource. Now, these prospectors needed to buy their supplies and materials. So in some cases, people saw that as an opportunity to build a business for these prospectors to spend their money. Let's take a look at the building of boomtowns. Boomtowns were generally not kept up very well, and the quickly built buildings were not always safe or meant for the long term. Many boomtown residents actually lived in tents, while buildings were more likely to be businesses. Boomtowns might have a pony express for mail and telegrams. They were a place where miners could purchase mining equipment, weapons, and food. They typically had saloons. They also had assay offices which examined the metal found by miners and certified that it was real gold. So if you think about it, at this point in time, gold is what actually brought boomtowns to California and the West. We needed people to create businesses for the prospectors to buy their materials and goods. They needed to have the Pony Express to get their mail from their family members. They had saloons open so that they could get a hot meal or even a bath at that point in time, because some of them were living in tents, and saloons could provide some of those services for them. So that's how Boomtown started. Let's move on. Some of these boomtowns eventually became ghost towns, so let's read. Boomtowns during the gold rush were also completely dependent on those in the area looking for gold. When gold was not found, or when its supply was exhausted, people would disappear as quickly as they had come, leaving behind a ghost town. So the word dependent means in support of. So in order for a boom town or a town to continue to be able to survive on its own, it would need people to spend the money in their businesses. And if there weren't any people to spend the money in their businesses, then they would have to go and look elsewhere to find jobs or open their new businesses. The word exhausted in this case doesn't mean tired, but it means completely used up. So as soon as gold was completely unavailable or they couldn't find it anymore, then people decided that it was time for them to move on to find another place to look for gold. So if you notice to the right, there's an example of what a ghost town might look like, and it says towns could become ghost towns if residents left to find their fortunes elsewhere. So I hope you enjoyed listening to the information about boomtowns and how boomtowns came to be. There is an assignment in your Schoology Social Studies folder in week 7. Here is your assignment. After reading and listening to the video lesson on boomtowns, students will answer the 6 questions in their Schoology Social Studies course folder, week 7. Remember to restate part of your answer as an answer statement. Then answer the question by referring to the text. That means looking back at the text. And look for the puzzle piece. Okay, there's an example of the puzzle piece next to it. And what I mean by restating your question into your answer is that if the question is, what is a boomtown? You would restate part of your question as a boomtown is, and then briefly describe what a boomtown would be using your text to go back to. Number 2, what causes boomtowns? Boomtowns are caused by, and that's your restatement, and then you would answer that question with the restatement, and looking back at your text, you should be able to say what causes a boomtown. Boomtowns are caused by blank, and then you finish that statement. So I hope that this gives you a little bit of guidance, and if you have any other questions, you can just shoot myself or Miss Badger an email in Schoology. Have a great Wednesday, and I hope you learned a lot about boomtowns today. Thank you.